You're listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Honk, honk, everybody. It's time for This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs. He's Ben, I'm Hobbs. You're in Clown World, but y'all knew that already. How is everyone today? Ben, how are you doing, sir?
I'm poor for everything because all my money's being given away.
Yes, that is going to be a big topic of discussion tonight, is that water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, at least not for the American people. But we're out there just making it rain for every other country on the planet, it seems, especially the more volatile ones. So, yeah, our elected representatives have let us down again.
You know, and I had somebody ask me a question this week. They're like, "What?" They're like, "You're in government, and you know about all this economic bullshit." And he's like, "Why do they have to tax us?" If he said, "If inflation is taxation, and they can just print all the money they want, why do they have to tax us? Why can't they just print money and cut out the middleman?" And I was kind of like, "Have you ever seen that GIF where it's Nathan Fillion and like, like, I'm like, I can't answer that one. I don't know why. I mean, our monetary system and our government's so fucked up that probably just printing what they need at this point would be easier and just let it inflate.
Well,
maybe even be more fair. I don't.
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that. The fact that they can print money, so they shouldn't be able to tax us. If they weren't taxing us, they'd have nothing to hold over our heads. And it would keep the illusion, it would destroy the illusion that we're all in this together and you have to pay in and chip in and that
your fair share.
Like, you're an essential part of government. You are what makes the government work by paying your taxes and all of the other things. You know, if it was just a money spigot that they could turn on, then, you know, nobody would feel like they had any skin in the game, and then they would just kind of decide not to do anything the government said anymore. And the other thing is, well, this isn't an explanation for that or an answer for that question, but it's more of just a statement, that a truism that I think more people need to really just let sink into their hearts. It's that the government doesn't levy taxes in order to provide services.
Mm-hmm.
The government provides services in order to justify levying taxes.
Like the homeless crisis.
Yeah, levying taxes is just a way for them to have you by the balls. It's another mechanism of control. And this one's the hard power mechanism of control. The other soft power mechanisms of control, like social media, old media, all of the ways of social engineering that they've gone through since forever, propaganda, schooling, those are all soft. Those are all the soft power. The levying taxes and using that as a noose around your neck, that's part of the hard power, along with policing and military and stuff.
Yeah, it was a question, you know, at first I was like, well, this is a dumb question. The more I thought about it as I was standing there, it's like, this might be onto something.
Yeah, I think I've seen the meme floating around, and for the life of me, I think that Nathan is the one that made it a long time ago. It was the Aztec from Road to El Dorado, where it's like the fat chieftain is like, "Sir, they can print money. Why do they tax us?" And he's like, like sudden dawning realization. I've seen that meme floating around, and I'm pretty sure Nathan actually made that one years ago.
Well, he was ahead of his time because the normies are starting to wake up to what's going on with it.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, that leads into the whole shit show with the money handout. I mean, what did it end up being? 80 some million?
Like $91 billion.
Or yeah, B. Sorry, and why would I think M? Sorry, Simon just popped in here, so I was looking away. We want to drop Simon in early here. I mean, he probably kept up on that too, since it's
might as well.
Simon, can we drop you up here? All right,
Evening.
let me bring him in here.
You've got an avatar for me.
I do. That one.
It'll do.
I have not been able to locate the other one. But Simon, we were just talking about some taxation issues leading into the handout to Israel and Ukraine. I didn't get to catch your guys' show this week. I've been busy with other stuff. Last week I watched all your shows, so we ended up having
Thank you very much.
So you're gonna have to carry the weight on this one a little bit.
So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh boy. Well, hey, I think you got to log off and log in, Simon.
Emergency. It's all okay.
There he is.
We're back.
You're back.
You
Great. Okay. So that's all debt. So that there's no taxation for that. That's all borrowing. The whole 95 billion is borrowing.
That's the thing. Borrowing from who?
From the pension market and the Chinese.
So, considering that a not insignificant chunk of that money is going to Taiwan to defend against the Chinese, we're borrowing money from the Chinese to bolster a military that the Chinese are going to be fighting in the near future.
Yeah, but when it comes to giving stuff to the Taiwanese, we're literally like 15 years behind on their orders, right?
Yeah.
We're like a generation behind on aircraft.
Yeah.
So
because it took us an extra generation to build our F-35.
And you see this we're so behind now on the ships and submarines that they're saying that on the new class of submarines there's going to be 1 a year built as opposed to 2 a year.
Yeah, there's a huge government campaign. I've seen the ads everywhere. Maybe my feed's different than your guys about build a submarine for patriotism or something. You know, they're just trying to get as many people as possible building submarines. And you go to this site, I think it's just buildasubmarine.com.
Not even a .gov.
No, I don't. Maybe it's .gov, but there's like there's thousands of jobs to build submarine across the country because all this is sourced. A lot of this is sourced domestically. So I mean, these are
but don't forget they've now got this massive AUKUS project with Australia and Britain that's now going to include potentially Japan, New Zealand, and Canada. And there's just not the capacity. There's not the industrial capacity to fulfill these orders, unless we outsource it to like the Indians and the South Koreans. There's just not the shipyards available in North America to build 2 or 3 nuclear submarines a year.
Yeah, here it is. Buildsubmarines.com. Shitload of jobs building submarines. Celebrating 1 year of AUKUS. Yeah.
Yeah, AUKUS.
It's insane to me that we don't have, we're close to 80 years on from the end of the Second World War when we had all of this massive manufacturing infrastructure that we built. And then over the years, I mean, it just mothballed, fell apart, went away, wasn't upkept. We're putting out destroyers and cruisers and aircraft carriers, and then later submarines just at a phenomenal rate. And now with 80 years of advancement, we can't replicate even a fraction of that. And I understand that there's a difference between the relatively high number, low tech. Like you compare a Sherman tank to an Abrams, it's going to take a lot more expertise and time and resources to build an Abrams tank as compared to a Sherman. But the same thing goes for submarines and aircraft carriers and stuff, modern stuff as compared to the World War II stuff. But at the same time, it's like you tell me we can only build 1 submarine a year.
3,800 jobs are what they have, and these are jobs that they were telling people not to go to college for: welding engineers, lathe operators, CNC machinists.
You see, now you can go to college, get arrested for being anti-Semitic, and then work in the prison workshop.
For a fraction of the money. Yep, that
For
might
a
be.
fraction of the money.
For the last 20 years, though, they've been saying don't go to trade school, go to college, learn to code, get a basket weaving degree, and here we are.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit! People that work with their hands are actually still important.
Basket weaving is extremely underrated.
Well,
I mean,
and I made the prediction during COVID that I hope we see a flip flop in blue collar wage versus white collar wage.
I mean,
because
when you're going out onto the public street to fight against the National Guard, what are you going to carry all your petrol bombs in?
your feminist studies crocheted basket.
Yeah.
You'll have a whole wheat basket collection for each color of the gay pride flag. You'll just hand them out.
Yeah. South Park had an episode like that too, where it's like the handymen were the richest people in the country because everybody forgot how to actually do manual labor.
Hey, when it comes to being a plumber or an electrician, that's exactly true, right?
It should be that way. It should have been that way all along. I don't know how people sitting in an office, how society got to the point where some guy sitting in an office makes more than a guy covered in shit.
Because racial discrimination ended the apprentice and journeyman project through the unions.
Could you expand on that? I don't get what you're saying.
Because you used to go in at a certain level and you'd have to work through stages to be a fully qualified electrician or plumber or carpenter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they got sued for racial discrimination, and so they just said, right, okay, these colored folks, for want of another phrase, can suddenly just go straight in with an instant qualification. And so that destroyed the whole process.
Right. So once again, here we go, ruining everything.
That was one of the earliest versions of the DEI.
Yeah, the affirmative action. Yeah. I'm just going to branch off on a tangent here. This is just some interesting information that a lot of times when people are arguing about DEI or woke or critical race theory or any of these things with these nebulous and sometimes undefined characteristics, you'll be arguing like, I don't want CRT in my school, and they'll retort with, can you define CRT? What is CRT? And then you're just kind of like, it's like you know it when you see it, right? Well, I saw the perfect explanation for it the other day on Twitter of all places. The guy said that CRT, DEI, woke, whatever you want to call it, is Marxism for those who prefer race, gender, or sexuality struggle to class struggle and social issues to economic issues. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Succinct. Do with that information what you will. Anyways, moving on.
Well, speaking of DEI, I posted this in the chat group. Recently, I'd gone to Pennsylvania to tour Gettysburg, and Pennsylvania has its own convenience stores called Sheetz. If anybody's been there, they've seen them.
Yeah, I saw the whole issue about the background checks for the employees there.
Yeah, I mean, they're great stores, well run, clean. I went to them whenever I had the chance. Apparently, Sheetz has decided that they're not going to hire anybody with a criminal record, and oops, they became racist. I don't know how that works out, but
yeah. See, that's almost the exact opposite of Waffle House. Because Waffle House, and I'm not joking, Waffle House will actually give hiring preferences to ex-cons because they would rather see somebody coming out of the prison system get gainful employment to avoid recidivism and get that as they're stepping back into society, and it works. And Waffle Houses are not clean or tidy, but But holy shit, you will never get more full on $3.95 than you will in a Waffle House.
They're not tidy or well read. I mean, yeah, that's
well, they're well run. They are well run. But if you go into a Waffle House and the guy behind the counter cooking isn't 6'5" and built like a linebacker with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and a hairnet on, then I don't want it.
So yeah, they brought a suit up against Sheet saying they can't discriminate by criminal record or it's racist.
What an odd thing to say.
It kind of dovetails into that other story where they were going to quit checking young mothers for drug use because the results coming out of those tests were skewed towards racism. Like, oh, what an odd thing to say there. We got some nudising going on.
Yes, the implications, Batman, the implications. Anyways, so we kind of wandered off there from that big ass spending bill, though. But sandwiched amongst all of that, billions and billions of dollars, was actually
the segue was the black hole, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but sandwiched within all of the layer cake of awfulness that was that spending bill, there was actually $300 million for border security, and I was like, "What?" And then it's like, no, that's border security for Ukraine.
That's our border, though. Didn't you see that?
Yes.
Person.
Yes, Ukraine's border is our border. And what's our border? Don't worry about it.
If Ukraine's border was our border, Russia'd be having a lot easier time.
Yeah, they definitely would. Speaking of our borders, for the first time in history, the Canadian border is starting to be a little bit of an issue because we have a couple of years ago, they caught 2,200 illegal immigrants, mostly of Indian extraction, coming across the border from Canada. And this year so far, they've caught over 30,000. Mostly
Indians?
Mostly Indians coming into the United States from Canada.
How are they getting up there? Or they because they're considered part of the Commonwealth, huh?
Yep. They're a Commonwealth nation, and a lot of Indians have flown in and emigrated to Canada, and they're actually finding the economic situation up there so shitty that there's actually been a mass return to India and illegal immigration into the United States. They're jumping the Canadian ship.
Great. How do you even fix that? I mean, you tell Canada to quit. I mean, Canada's probably more than happy to let them come through. It's probably a reverse Mexico situation. I mean, just on the other side, Mexico's more than happy to let people come in. So I suppose Canada's more than happy to get rid of them.
It's possible. You heard anything about that, Simon?
Canada is such a fucking state, and it's actually quite a big national security issue as well, because you know how NATO has this agreement that they'll spend a minimum of 2.0% of gross domestic product per year on defense, right? So Canada's plan is that in 5 years' time from now, they'll be spending 1.76%.
Oh, Canada.
And in the meantime, the whole northern Arctic Circle, whatever the heck they call it up there, where like nobody can live but Eskimos, or Inuits, or whatever else you'd like to call them, is wide the fuck open to kind of like Russian invasion. So we've got a really, personally, I'm of the don't poke the bear persuasion, but given that we are poking the bear in the testicles every 5 seconds, some kind of response is fairly inevitable. And so that is very much a case of the back door being wide open for the Pride Parade.
Right. See, I think that what Canada's doing right now is, in order to meet that 2% of GDP spending, is they're doing an excellent job not of raising their spending, but of lowering their GDP.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job of that. So all we got to do is just make ourselves a little more poor and hold spending where it is, and we'll hit that 2% of GDP eventually.
But you see,
brilliant.
The Americans have a huge problem as well, because obviously we've got Alaska, and we have like 2 40-year-old icebreakers, and we need like 20 nuclear-powered icebreakers, and even the Russians are struggling to build those fast enough. So we are just like a decade at least behind on that. And the Canadians aren't helping whatsoever. And so,
what's the deal with the icebreakers to keep that area clear along the western coast from Alaska to US? Or
we need to keep Anchorage to Newfoundland navigable now, because the Russians are keeping Vladivostok to Murmansk open year round.
Well, I have it on good authority that within a decade, global warming is going to make icebreakers obsolete.
To worry about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to have to worry about it. So,
well,
done
but
and dusted.
We can't guarantee that every year, every month.
Right.
And so that is I mean, seriously, when you look at the new NATO theater commands, and you look at how much effort is going into training in Norway at the moment, it's because they anticipate fighting in the Arctic.
That'll be quite an up-tempo swing, going from fighting in the deserts to fighting in the Arctic.
I mean, if people thought the desert sucked, I'm sure the Arctic is a whole more terrible animal than that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
but I mean, what are they? I don't understand why they think Russia. I don't get the Russia panic. Especially with Norway.
The whole Russia panic is completely artificial. It's just another massive wealth transfer.
Yeah.
This time not to the pharmaceutical industry, but to the military-industrial complex.
So why are they going through the extra theater of like, we need to start training in Norway in case Russia attacks up in
because Sweden and Finland have just joined, and so they need to make them feel valuable.
It's like the special ed kids when they give them something to do. So they feel like they're contributing to the class.
Plus, also, let's face it, the women are fairly attractive. So if you're going to send special forces guys to bang somebody, it might as well be Finns and Swedes, right?
Well, better American special forces than Muslim immigrants, I guess.
Well, we're a few years behind the 8 ball on that one, especially in Sweden.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the material benefits for the American special forces.
Well, I've got a friend in Norway, and he talks a lot of shit about Sweden. Apparently, Norway didn't buy into the immigrant frenzy like
no, they
Sweden
didn't.
did.
But you've got to remember that Sweden used to include Norway, and they only broke away in 1905 or something.
Yeah, what was it, Denmark? I mean, we're getting into some.
No, between Norway and Sweden.
Oh, okay.
So they actually have quite a hard border, precisely because of the immigrants. The Norwegians don't want all the Muslim migrants that have turned 65 townships of Sweden into no-goes.
Yeah, a hard border. I mean, good luck getting over that mountain range into Norway if you're an immigrant.
Yeah. But funnily enough, going the other way, it's the same with Finland. But Finland used to have a wide open border with Russia, and now they're trying to fortify 900 kilometers.
Yeah. Yeah, I speaking of the immigrants to Sweden and everything, my stepdaughter is going to be taking a European trip on her senior trip here in a couple of years. So we're trying to save pennies for that, and we were talking about some of the situations that are going on over in Europe, especially places like Sweden, and how Paris is basically a dump. I saw a headline today that some French movie maker said that he's not going to make a sequel to his most famous movie because he says he can't make it because Paris is so ugly now. But anyways, I was talking to my stepdaughter about it, and I'm like, yeah, Europeans, they talk a lot of shit about Americans and our gun violence problem, but up in Sweden, they've taken in all of these third world immigrants, and they skipped right past gun violence, and Sweden is now the hand grenade violence capital of the Western world.
God bless.
That is entirely true.
Well, the funny thing about Europeans, we talk about how progressives taking over the media and all the movies. I mean, a lot of Europeans' opinion of what an American is from, they get it from all these mainstream sources. They have no idea that there's a whole nother type of, what type of American are you? They have no idea there's a whole nother type of America over here that they don't have any idea of.
Well, there's 100 types of America. There's 1,000 Americans.
Oh, yeah.
I sometimes. Go ahead.
Is that why you guys are working on 16-year-old Swedish twins coming to Nebraska in order to educate them on the true diversity they're missing out on?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's where you plead the fifth, right?
Yeah, but
no, I watch some of these videos sometimes where it's like foreigners reacting to X in America, and it's like I've been living in America for 5 years. It's nothing like on TV. It's like, yeah, no shit, America's huge.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They have a hard time grasping that each state is wildly different from others.
Right, we're not one country. We're 50 countries in a trench coat.
And but that's what they see. They see this mainstream news and media that we've got a bunch of blue-haired protesters, and they think that's what's going on.
Hey, we're relying upon the blue-haired protesters to save us from the Zionists at the moment. So.
I'm surprised neo-Nazis haven't popped up at these yet. Why do they pop? Why do neo-Nazis pop up at some conservative protest, but here they're not popping up at a kill the Jew protest? Huh?
Because when they're at a conservative protest, it's a fucking op.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, the Zionists are actually recruiting online for Sephardi Jews, which are the Middle Eastern Jews as opposed to the Khazarian Jews, to infiltrate the protest groups and basically cause shit. So like January the 6th, there is a big agent provocateur recruitment effort underway as we speak.
Well, and I saw that maybe it's just a bullshit story, but Iranian controlled militias are posting on social media supporting these campus protests.
Oh no, you guys have no idea. Seriously, it's the Russians. The Chinese today said, whilst the Americans were beating their students, we put 3 men in space, and they did.
Yeah.
Right?
How the times have changed.
Blinken, as we speak, because they're like 12, 13 hours ahead of us, right, is going into meetings in Beijing, and he was going to give them shit about human rights in China, and President Xi's going to sit him down and play him 6 hours of fucking American students being beaten up, then say fuck you and throw him out. So it's a big fucking problem. That was one of the first headline of my show tonight was the axis of evil expressed concerns over American human rights.
Yeah. So I just sent a meme to Ben, and it's something that I made earlier, and it kind of encapsulates the weird the weird relationship that our government seems to have with Israel. And if you can see, and if you're listening to this instead of watching it, it's the sleeping shack meme, where sleeping shack is government and the media. And the first picture is a communist protest or a communist rally in New York City. He sleeps. The second one is at Arizona State University. A guy is holding up a sign that says "Death to America." Shaq sleeps. The third one is an article from the Texas State University newspaper that says your DNA is an abomination. It's called End Whiteness. It's the anti-white rhetoric. Shaq sleeps. And then the final picture is the anti-genocide, pro-Palestine, Columbia University protest, and Shaq says real shit. So that I've heard this word before, and Harrison Smith says it on American Journals in the morning. Says that America is a satrapy to the state of Israel.
Yeah,
and I think that is probably about 1,000% correct. We do.
Yeah, I listened to his show today, and the first hour was excellent. Chase is just terrible. What Alex is thinking, letting him cover for him, I mean, it was like bearable when Chase was doing the morning show, and and Owen was covering from Alex, and Harrison was doing the afternoon show. That worked okay, but the situation they've got now, where Chase is doing the main show, that must be destroying their revenue generation. I just don't understand how that is tolerable, to be honest. But anyway, it's not my problem. But Harrison has been doing an outstanding job with a little bit of encouragement from me for the last few months on the whole Zionist genocide type situation. But Chase is very weak on that indeed.
And I don't necessarily even disagree with the protesters. I mean, I'm always up for an anti-war protest. But
the point is here is, from a true First Amendment point of view, it's not that we agree; it's that they have a right to express an opinion,
right?
Without having the Texas Rangers, otherwise now known as the Department of Public Safety, or the Uvalde Cowards, to come in and whack people with batons. And in Georgia, supposedly they use rubber bullets.
Mm-hmm. Right, and if you compare what they're doing now to, say, the BLM riots a couple of years ago, these Palestinian protesters,
they're not even these student demonstrations. They're on private property. They're not even blocking traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Completely non-violent, supported by the university faculties. And yet we've got all these state governors claiming that they're the kind of like archetype of anti-Semitism. It's just total BS. When actually what they're doing is what every American has said, every, in quotation marks, good German was supposed to have done from 1940 to 1945, which was protest against the genocide.
Right. They're what they're saying. You might consider it to be ugly or whatever, but at this point right now, it's just words.
Well, and it seems like they have a weird target of the universities. What would be the best target for them to be protest? It seems like protesting against a progressive
very
university.
Mild, but you've got to remember that a lot of these Ivy League schools have massive endowments and foundations. And so they want them to divest from aardvark land.
Right.
But there's also a lot of Jews who are trustees of the universities.
Well, and I've said for years that, just to back up what you said there, I've said for years that, all the university is controlled by progressives, which what you're saying there by association is Jewish. Is that correct?
Yeah.
There's massive donors too that are
But now,
independently wealthy Jewish alumni that are threatening to pull their donations, their yearly contributions from these universities.
Anything to cause the downfall of the progressive university system, I'm all for. I hope they just start burning them down at this point.
But now it's something like, it was 50 universities at noon my time. Now it's like 55 or something. Now I appreciate there's like thousands if you include all the kind of 2-year colleges and stuff. But let's hope that the principle spreads. And I mean, this is bad news for the Biden campaign, because not only do they want these people to vote for them, but they want these people to campaign. They want them to volunteer, stuff envelopes, make calls, drive elderly people to the polling stations and stuff.
Well, I put in the show notes, and you brought it up. Biden seems like he's trying to piss off as much as America as possible before the election. At this point.
But the moron Republicans, those who probably have been bought out by AIPAC, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not kind of saying, hang on a second, you need to respect these people's constitutional rights. Abbott's saying, throw them in prison, expel them, deport them.
Deport them where? They're American citizens.
Some of them are, but not all of them, right?
Yeah.
But it's like it is absolutely absurd. This is a once in a generation opportunity to swing the kind of 90% pro-Democrat Gen Z. Even if you can take 10 or 20% of that market and make them early Republican convertees before they've ever had to pay their first income tax bill, this should be the moment for them to seize upon that. But it's actually the conservative Christian Zionists, like Speaker Johnson, who are out there trying to shovel money to the fucking aardvarks quicker than they can burn it or bomb it.
And Trump seems to be taking the right route. I mean, I'm not sure, I watch enough media. I don't know what his position is on it. I mean, just keeping quiet on it seems like the best idea.
No, he's supporting Johnson hugely, and Johnson is crazy Christian Zionist.
Yeah. So yesterday or day before yesterday, Dan Bongino's take on it is that with the spending bill, with the things going on in Israel and especially in Ukraine and many of the other things, the Republicans have handed the Democrats the best gift of all by putting a Republican face on the Democrat agenda. The Democrats are the ones...
Which is genocide.
Yeah, well, the Democrats are the ones that wanted all of the spending bills to be passed to give aid to every country except the United States. They're the ones that are looking to not win the conflict in Ukraine, which is unwinnable, but to at least prolong it until the election. That way,
so that's exactly the goal. Is to string it out until December.
Well, I mean, they're really showing how much they've become a uniparty at this point. I mean, this is worse than some other years. There's almost nothing separating them.
Even though Kennedy has flipped on Ukraine, notwithstanding that his son went for a year volunteering with the Ukrainian International Legion, he we've had 15 of his family members come out last week and back Biden against him. And he's claiming, it's like a family tradition to back aardvark land. And I'm like, 15 of your blood relatives are saying that you're living scum, and you're still trying to maintain some kind of like family tradition. what the fuck do you think Thanksgiving is going to be like after you lose?
It's
right? So
why
would he not flip on Aardvark land as an attorney and point out we're violating the Genocide Convention?
Yeah, I mean, he's missing he could grab a lot of those young voters.
He could grab 5 million voters in Minnesota and Michigan, for fuck's sake.
Yep.
It is absolutely absurd. And one can only think they've got the unredacted version of his fucking diary when allegedly he admitted to fucking 35 women when he was married to his first wife, which caused her to attempt to commit suicide.
What was this in? Whose diary? His
diary, yeah.
Huh. It's almost as bad as Biden's daughter's diary.
Yeah. With maybe less bubble bath involved.
Or maybe more.
Yeah, 35 women. I mean, there's a lot of bubble baths.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah, I mean, that we wanted to touch on that, that Biden was, I mean, he was just managing to piss everybody off at this point.
The capital gains tax thing was the other one where he's trying to piss everybody off. He wants to up the capital gains tax to 44.6%, which is the highest that it's ever been. And in addition to that, he wants to put a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains. Now, for anybody out there who might not understand what that means, I'll just break it down into some nice round numbers that was kindly relayed by a friend of ours in the chat. Let's say that your house is worth $1 million. Now you do some work on it, you do some renovations, or just through inflation alone.
Yeah, that's not how it's going to work. That's not how.
Well, your house.
Yeah. So your homesteaded house isn't going to be affected. What they're talking about potentially is massive stock market or equity gains for people whose net worth is like north of 100 million.
Right. That's where it always starts, though. Remember?
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying, but essentially, France has the same kind of thing, where they charge you 2% tax on your global worth.
Right.
So whether you sell it, whether your value has gone up or down, it's give us 2% of everything you're worth every year, irrespective of what you're doing with it.
Right. 2% is obnoxious, but it's doable.
25%. That's 25%
is insane
of the gain.
Yes,
right?
Unrealized.
So if you've gained 10%, you're going to pay 2.5% of your total worth, right? On the years in which it goes up rather than down.
Right.
In France, it's 2%, irrespective of whether it goes up, down, or stays the same. So statistically, you're going to pay that 2% 3 times as often as you would in America. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is pretty severe. And if you're running a family business, or your major asset is like a rental apartment building or something, what percentage of an apartment do you sell every year to pay the 2%?
Right. That's the big fear about any of these wealth taxes is that if you don't have liquidity to cover that tax, you have to sell your assets. And now suddenly that unrealized capital gains that you would be getting taxed at 25% becomes realized capital gains that you're now going to be charged at 44.6%. And if you don't have the liquidity to cover that difference, you're going to have to sell more assets and more until you can actually
and that apparently is the plan.
Yes.
To basically colorize the stock market and real estate holdings of America. By that I mean de-whiteify it.
Well, I don't even know about de-whiteifying. I think that's just a way for big hedge funds like BlackRock and State Street to snatch everything up, and I mean everything.
Well, no, it's really kind of drive prices down, but it's once again, the folks with the small hats might be unhappy about that unless they figure it's part of the long-term plan. I don't know.
And this is going to sound wacky coming from a libertarian, but as far as these tax increases go, just let the government do it, because they're just going to fuck everybody by inflating the money anyways. You know what I mean? I mean, they're going to get it one way or another. So if they're going to increase the taxes on it, fine.
Right. You see now, because of the Repo Act that they've passed to take the Russian assets held within the United States and give them to Ukraine, that's only like 6 billion, right? But the Europeans are talking about doing it for all the Russian assets held by Euroclear, which is like 250 billion.
Well, and throw the third thing in there, what Russia plans to do.
And that Russia announced today, they said, go ahead, and we're going to confiscate every privately held European asset in Russia that equates to 228 billion at their current valuations.
And JP Morgan.
So that's only $500 million.
Yeah.
So the whole thing's a wash. So they're like, fine, you take all of our bonds, we're going to take all your factories and hard assets.
Jeez.
Yeah, so they're just grabbing money.
But what
it's
that's
such a
going
fucked up situation.
Is make every country in the world realize you don't want to have anything in dollars or euros, because it's just going to be stolen. And that's going to massively increase the de-dollarization, and in this case, the reluctance of people to hold even euro assets as well.
So there again, screwing up the value of the dollar, so it fucks everybody.
But to be fair, I'm sure, though I have known you for 20 years, that we've all been saying this for a long time, and it hasn't come to pass. And so everyone's like, yeah, well, you shouted wolf like 75 times, and so nobody wants to hear it anymore. Mm-hmm. But now we're legislating for it rather than it being one kind of like, minor conspiracy theory. Now they're kind of like really rubbing it in our faces.
Yeah, and again, being a tax a rich guy is not a good thing for a libertarian to say, but they've gotten to the point where they just don't care. They're not going to decrease their spending. They don't really give a shit about the little guy. So if they don't get it from somewhere, they're just going to screw us all by ruining the dollar and get their money that way.
Yeah.
So sorry, $100 million guy, if you got to lose some money so that the government doesn't hold everybody hostage with inflation.
Yeah, but do you think those guys aren't going to have good fucking accountants? I mean, they're removing Panama like right now, right?
Yeah, 46%. I'm sure those guys will weasel out of it somehow.
Yeah.
Well, I saw something a while ago that it was you could tax everybody who made over like $100,000 a year, tax them at 100%, confiscate everything from anybody who's over $100,000 a year in this country, and it would be enough to fund the government for like 16 days.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, at one point in the 1970s, Britain had a 98% super tax.
Yeah, and didn't like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and everybody else move to France and take their money with them?
They moved to France, Ireland, Monaco. Yeah, they just left.
Yeah, took their money with them. So,
yeah.
So back to my original theory about if this government can just print what they want, just don't tax anybody. Then they can just print what they need, and it'll work its way out.
Well, you're under the assumption right now that they want to keep things going.
But you brought it up. Yeah,
the central bank digital currency is the end goal, and the sooner that they can crash the dollar and make it look like it was an inevitability instead of an engineered collapse, the happier they'll be. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended, because the purpose of a system is what it does. And what they're doing right now is intentionally collapsing our dollar.
Yeah, well, it's not collapsing at the moment. At the moment, it's strengthening against the Indian rupee, the ruble, the Chinese yuan, the
Simon brings
Japanese
up a
yen.
point. I look at gold value of various currencies around the world, and the dollar is still because gold is the same everywhere. You know, the amount of gold that you can buy with a Chinese yuan and a ruble and a rupee is not doing well compared to the dollar. So it's like the whole world's currency is shit in the bed, and America's is still kind of chugging along.
Yeah, best house in a bad neighborhood. You're still in a bad neighborhood.
So, that is the issue that always undermines the gold bugs. Mm-hmm. But there are, there's a lot of events coming up in the next 6 months. We've got the SCO heads of government meeting. We've got the NATO 75th anniversary, just straight after July 4th, when everyone's going to be like nursing their fucking hangovers and not watching what's happening in Washington, D.C. in the second week of July. We've got Putin going to visit Xi in May in Beijing. They're being very coy about what the agenda for that is and what the exact travel dates are. And then we've got obviously the G20, and we've got the BRICS, the big BRICS meeting in October in Kazan, that could go from BRICS 10 to BRICS 40 or BRICS 50. So, I mean, I know Xi hypes it about, changes we haven't seen in 100 years and so forth. We've also got the United Nations Summit for the Future. That's in September. So, I mean, and all of these huge number of elections all over the world this year. Half the world is voting this year. Half the world is voting this year. And we're really starting to see a massive censorship program running through at the moment. I mean, we're seeing it in Ireland, we're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in Britain, we're seeing it in Canada, and now we're seeing it big time in Australia with their e-safety commissioner, who has successfully censored LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, and is now trying to censor Twitter.
Well, the TikTok thing went through, didn't it?
The TikTok thing, they've given them a year, which of course, because they knew it was super unpopular with the Gen Z, so they figured, oh, well, if it's 6 months out from the election, nobody will be thinking about it. That's why they gave them a year instead of 6 months, right?
Well, yeah, that too. And if Trump gets reelected, it'll fall under his watch, and if it fails spectacularly, it'll be his fault. Same thing with the crisis in Ukraine. Same thing with all the stuff that Mike Johnson and the congressional Republicans handed to the Democrats on a silver platter by putting a Republican face to the Democrat agenda. All of this is going to fall into Trump's lap if he gets elected.
Yeah, no, I agree with you entirely.
Well, and it's a Democrat hate so bad for Trump that they would rather see Trump win and fail spectacularly than Biden win. So maybe they're setting up all sorts of landmines.
I think what Trump should do, instead of appointing the likes of Bolton and Pompeo, is just keep the entire Biden cabinet.
And then pin it on them.
And then as things blow up, he just replaces them one after the other. That would be the best way to go, right?
That's pretty strategic. Yeah. Yep.
To say, I'm the
Plus
new boss, but everyone else stays the same.
Right, and shit rolls downhill, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And we can bring back some classic early 2000s Apprentice era Trump with "You fired."
And he does that live on TV.
Yep.
That would be great.
Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, worst secretary maybe ever. It's what I'm told. It's what they say. You're fired.
Frankly, I don't see how that is not the best possible idea in terms of maintaining responsibility on the Biden administration, right? I mean, no matter who he picks, if it's like instant fucking diarrhea, what are they going to do to fix it, right?
Right. And then he'll just have to have some real heavy hitters waiting in the wings to come in and pick up the pieces.
I'm going to pick up the pieces, and there are going to be a lot of pieces.
Unfortunately, this is going to be kind of a political version of the economic shock therapy that old Milei is subjecting the Argentines to.
Yeah, which is not going particularly. I mean, inflation does appear now on a weekly basis to be essentially zero now.
Okay.
But the damage that has been done in terms of impoverishing people, well, I mean, you know, it's one of those things where you've always got what they call the lag effect, right?
Right.
So he only really took control in November. So, okay, let's say he's been in control for 6 months. You know, year-on-year inflation is still 287%. Teacher salaries have lost their spending power 56% in the last 4 months.
So one thing that I was kind of confused about, because I don't pay a great deal of attention to what's going on with Milei in Argentina and his economic shock therapy plan. How much of it is this lag effect? Like the situation it's bad, it's going to get a little worse, and then things are going to pick up in a year, but you guys are just going to have to tighten the belt and hang on to the roller coaster. How much of it is that? And how much of it is some sour grapes, stay behind network types in the government stymieing his agenda and making it so that it doesn't work?
Well,
similar to how Trump's first term was sabotaged a lot with people that he shouldn't have.
You have to remember that Milei, so they have a 2-round presidential system, that if the first person doesn't get over 50%, they have a second round, right?
Yeah.
So the actual the equivalent of congressional elections for the House and Senate equivalents, he only won 15% of the vote, 1-5, in the first round for his party.
Mm-hmm.
So even though in the second round he got 55% for the presidential election, there wasn't a second round of the congressional elections. That was already done from 2 months beforehand.
Mm.
So he's trying to govern the country with 15% of the Congress seats.
So he's got a hostile Congress.
Extremely hostile Congress. And he's managed to form some kind of coalitions, but he's still sub 50%. So he's finding it almost impossible to get anything through the Argentine Congress. At the same time, he's announced that he wants to become a NATO global partner and ally with America and Israel. And now he's buying 40-year-old F-16s from Denmark, which is so shit, they won't even give them to the Ukrainians.
One other thing that I forgot to touch on earlier, the new head of PBS, or Catherine Mayer or whatever. Did you see
not PBS,
NPR.
NPR, sorry. Did you see where it's come out that a lot of the countries in the Middle East were not allowing her in because she was a CIA asset?
No, I hadn't seen that, but that's funny.
Yeah, there was a like the government of Libya disinvited her from being in the country because they accused her of being a CIA asset. And I guess there's multiple. She was, you remember when Arab Spring was going on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
2011.
She suspiciously would show up in all those places weeks before it would happen, and somebody posted screenshots of her Twitter feed talking about what was going on in these areas and what the rebels needed to help. And I think NPR is a CIA asset now.
Well, always has been. It's a
Yeah,
government.
she's
like
using, and they were
Voice of
comparing. She's
America
using the same strategies that they used in overthrowing governments
Yeah.
in the Arab Spring in stuff that NPR does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I found that very interesting.
I mean, you look at her past statements.
Oh
absolutely
yeah, they're terrible.
Raving mad, completely insane.
Just wanted to close out with that. I think NPR is done for. Nobody's gonna. Nobody's gonna. It's done.
So yeah. So now that you brought that up, it did bring something to mind. There was a week or two ago, there was some undercover video of a guy who worked for the CIA and the FBI, who said that both of these agencies were targeting people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Alex Jones is using that as a basis potentially for a lawsuit because according to this guy in the undercover video, a lot of the impetus behind the Sandy Hook lawsuit was at the prodding of the agency. They didn't outright say, "Hey, you need to go and sue this guy," and wink wink, we're in in this jurisdiction, you're going to win a mint, right? But they helped it along, they ushered it along. So he's got potentially a lawsuit there. I said, somewhat in jest, but now that I'm thinking about it, it might be a little more plausible that they should settle out of court, and the funding and the infrastructure of NPR should be awarded to Alex Jones.
And the reason why I say it's done too is because Nebraska Public Media posts. I saw a post somebody shared. They're like, our funding drive's coming up, and just 125 comments of people just roasting it. I'll never listen to you again. You guys are a progressive plant, trying to brainwash middle America. It's like, oh, they're done.
Yeah. The only time you listen to NPR is if you're having trouble falling asleep at night.
and C-SPAN's not broadcasting.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and the classical image NPR was, a farmer in his field listening to the morning news before he heads out in his tractor. That was their rural target. I mean, they had a great into rural America. A lot of places there was no other options, and they kind of blew it by getting greedy with their brainwashing. They didn't play the long game very well. But speaking of the long game, we're over time on the hour. Thanks everybody for joining us. You can catch Simon and Sam on Weaponized News during the week. And I always forget the time, Simon, because I never catch you live.
It's going to be a real big show tomorrow. It's going to be a real big show with our penultimate episode of Anthony Aardvark as well. So that will be at 7 p.m. Eastern District
Eastern,
time.
7 Eastern, Weaponized News, 6 days a week, sometimes 7.
Sometimes 7, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. Roads the #2 Liberty everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, roads2liberty.com for our merch site. Talk to somebody today. We might be reworking that and seeing if we can get some people to buy some merch. So thanks for joining us, and stay honky.